All right, everybody. Hello, hello. Welcome, welcome. So I want to thank all the people here because they're like family and friends, and then the rest of you I want to thank for coming because you're not family and friends. I really appreciate it. Yes. So a couple things you need to know about this tonight. It's our first time we're doing it in this venue. This things that we're using, I think this is hilarious. This is from my daughter's karaoke machine that I think I bought for $30 about 10 years ago, and that was from a Guitar Hero thing that I had. So we've tried, and this it doesn't really even fit in here. So we're just doing the best we can. So we do this. We've been doing this for 7 months. We did it all last year, starting in July, I think. And we've done many different themes. So we've done miracles and lost and out of bounds and disguised and leap of faith and nick of time and all sorts of fun things like that. We're doing it every month in Mill Valley in a place called the Boomerang Lounge, which is where the old carpet store used to be. It's a shape like this, you know. You're shaking your head because you've been there. You've been there, yeah.
Wait, why don't you ask them how many have been there?
Who's been there? Who's been? Okay, excellent. You've probably got a rug there. Excellent. Wait, was it going out of business? Did you get a good deal? Yeah, I know. Yeah, for about 32 years it was going out of business. Absolutely. So we also, for those who I don't know, we also have a Facebook page. And if you're interested in telling a story, you can just do the QR code and get your information, and I will send you more information about the deal. What else can I tell you? So this is just like, for those, we have some Moth fans here. Who's a fan of the Moth? Raise your hand. Few of you are. These two people are not. They hate the Moth. The Moth is where they tell true stories told live in front of an audience without notes, and that's what we do here. And everybody, the big thing that we do in the Fly, which is what we call our event, the Fly is Factual Life Yarns. That's what it stands for. It's very clever. The thing is, we're all about authenticity. We want people to tell their stories, something that they experience, and that's what these stories tonight that you'll hear are about. The storytellers don't know what order we're going to go in because I don't really either. We're just going to make it up as we go along, but I'm going to start. What we do is we also project 5 words up on the screen, and the 5 words are words from our story. And it just kind of helps us keep on track and helps you figure out, thanks Mimi, helps you figure out kind of what's happening in the story. So let me get that going and I will tell my story. Okay. All right. So this is a story that some of you may have heard because I told it before, and the theme of that night was out of bounds. So I grew up in Brookline, Massachusetts. So that's just outside of Boston. And we belong to a tennis club called the Longwood Cricket Club. And it's everything that you'd expect from a East Coast country club. It had 25 grass courts. It had 19 clay courts. We had to wear all white. And it was, very waspy. We were the second Jewish family ever to get into this club, to be accepted into this club. So it was quite an experience. It was amazing because I would go there. I'd bike from my house, about 2 miles away from my house, and I'd bike there. And every summer, it was like camp. We would go and they'd have tennis clinics, and we'd play tennis all morning. And then we'd go out after the tennis clinic was over, we'd go swimming in the pool. And then after that, we'd go to the snack bar, and this is where we could sign for the food that you wanted. And they would make these hot dogs that were slathered with. Do you remember this? They slathered with butter on the buns. Oh my God, it was so good. I'm just thinking of that right now. It was delicious. With the tennis clinic, what would happen is you'd get to meet all the people that you played with, and it wasn't specifically by age; it was kind of by your ability. And so you'd play tennis with people, maybe they're older or maybe they were younger, but they were kind of your level. And it made for kind of a limited amount of friends you could choose from. And I became friends with a kid named Peter Martin. And Peter Martin was an interesting kid. He was a kid who he was kind of nerdy. He liked Dungeons and Dragons, and he was also kind of odd. One day we were walking near the Boston Marathon. We were kind of up a hill near the Boston Marathon. He saw a tire on the ground, a big car tire, and he took it and rolled it down the hill toward the runners of the Boston Marathon. Thought it was the funniest thing in the world. It didn't hit anybody, someone stopped it. But this was the type of kid. He was sort of, I kind of described him as the sort of human equivalent to There's Nothing Else On. He was kind of he was my choice. He was because he was really the only kid my age and we hung out. He was also the kid that I shared my vision with. I had this vision one night when I woke up in the middle of the night and I thought, you know those candy machines you put the quarter in and then you turn it and you get like 8 pieces of candy out? And I thought, wait a second, if you turn that and turn it just to a certain point, won't the candy keep coming out? Well, we tested the theory. And it turned out, after a little bit of work, if you just kind of jiggled it back and forth, the candy would keep coming. And Peter and I had a competition going all summer long until one day he sat there, he was outside a Stop and Shop in the Chestnut Hill Mall, and he was doing this back and forth, and he got over 100 candies out. They were these little sweet tart ones with the candy coating on the outside. And I was pissed because he had clearly won the thing. And he has a cup full of these things and he's walking down the street singing, "We are the champions." And he's so excited and he trips and he falls and all the candy goes on the ground. And he picks them all up and wipes them back into the cup and brings them back to the club and washes them underwater. It becomes a sticky, gluey mess. I'm not going to lie, it felt pretty good. But the coolest thing about this tennis club was that it was the home of the US Pro Tennis Tournament. And that was a big deal. It was where all of the tennis players would come. We had Connors, and we had Borg, and we had Guillermo Vilas, and Harold Solomon, all these amazing players, John McEnroe, all these guys would come and play. And the coolest thing, what did you say? Arthur Ashe. Arthur Ashe was there too. That's my mom, she knows. Come on in, Jules. Come on in. You've heard the story anyway. What was so cool about that is if you are a member of the club and you were a boy, girls did a different thing, they were ushers. But if you were a boy, you could be a ball boy. And that meant if you could throw the ball across the court, you could be a ball boy, and I was a ball boy. And the coolest thing about that was we got to we were like VIPs. We got uniforms. We got shoes and socks and shorts and a jacket and a cool shirt and a hat, and we were like the coolest thing, and we could go in and out of the club and in and out of all the venues that no one else could go. We got to meet the players in person. It was the coolest thing. And that year, Peter and I were on the court when a player named Victor Pecci came on, and this was in the center court in the stadium. And he came on, and he actually was a good player. I think he ended up being number 19 in the world. So he was a good player, and he had beaten Connors, and I think he had just come close to almost beating Borg in a match. So I mean, kind of a high level. And but he also was a guy from the Ilie Nastase school of tennis, which meant that he was an asshole. He would scream at the judges. He would yell at them. He'd carry on about everything. So of course, we were in this court. He was playing his singles match. He ended up actually winning the doubles tournament for that year. This was 1978. And he got really pissed because there was a call that he thought was in. The umpire said it was out of bounds, which was the theme for that month that I did. He said it was out of bounds. And he took the racket and he smacked it on the ground. He took it, he broke it under his foot. It was just hanging from the strings. And he threw it in the garbage. And I remember after the match was over, I went over to the tennis racket and I grabbed it because I'm like, oh my God, what a cool souvenir this would be. And of course, Peter Martin ran over and he used that old middle school trope. I saw it first, grabbed it. So we're fighting back and forth, pulling out of each other's hand, pulling it out. We start walking back to the club, and I am so pissed because he has it in his hand, and I swing around and I smack him as hard as I can in his arm. And he, this little scrawny kid, puts the racket down and just does one of these, and smacked me right in the face. Tooth goes through the lip, blood everywhere. It's all over my uniform. Mom is pissed because she has to get the stuff off. We have to go to the emergency room and make sure they don't need stitches. I didn't. But he turns to me and he goes, "Fine, you take it," and throws the racket down at me. So I had the racket. So the next day, I went into the club, and of course, because we had access to all the players, I went right up to Victor Pecci and I told him the story, and I showed him my fat lip, and I said, "Would you sign it?" And he signs the handle of the racket, and I thought, oh my God, this is the coolest thing that I have. And every year I would go, every once in a while I'd go into my closet where I stored this, and I'd be like, look at this thing that I have. This is such a cool memory. This is such a cool souvenir. So years passed. I went off to college. I came back, and I just thought, oh, I want to see that racket. And I look in the closet. It's not there. And I look in the under my bed, and it's not there. I look all over my room. It's not there. And I call down to my mom, and I say, Mom, where's that racket? She goes, oh, that old broken racket? You know, I threw that away. Yeah, there you go. So I learned 3 lessons that summer. I learned, number 1, you can always game the system. Number 2, friendship and souvenirs are kind of ephemeral. They kind of come and go. And the third thing I learned about permanence, right? You don't get to keep, I didn't get to keep the souvenirs. I didn't keep any of the signatures that I collected, their autographs. I didn't have that racket. But I do have a permanent reminder of both Peter Martin and Victor Pecci, and that's that permanent scar on my lip right here. Thank you. Oh, and I want to show you. There's me, and there's Peter Martin. Okay. So I always thought it was funny that my mother put the thing, she ironed that on the front of the shirt, because usually put it on the back, but it was on the front. That's me. Okay, great. That was my story. Thank you. Okay, so we have a bunch of other storytellers tonight, but before I get to the next storyteller, we had everybody write down 2 sentences about a story, and I just want to read some of them if I can with my glasses. Let's see. So here's a story. Someone said, this is for Out of Bounds. An alien experience late at night in Maine, New England, while you've on a night walk. That's what it says. Who wrote this? Okay. I see. Okay. All right. I thought it was like a real thing that might have happened to you. All right, we'll give it to you. We're going to read one more, and then we'll move on. All right. So this is in, I was 5 years old in Tahoe when my mother said, invite the neighbors for cocktails. I didn't know my left from my right, so I wandered for 40 minutes until knocking on the door, I'm lost. Joan Miller. Who's Joan? Wow, that's a good story, Joan. All right. Excellent. Okay. So for my storytellers, who would like to go next? I'll pick you if you don't pick. Anybody? All right. Lisa, do you want to go? Okay, Lisa's going to go next. Give it up for Lisa. Let me give you.
No, there's no theme this time.
There's no theme. What's that? Oh, yeah. Yes, you can. Thank you. I'm just getting my water.
Am I gonna break it? No. Okay. Hi there, I'm Lisa. I did this with the theme Disguised. So if any of you were at the Halloween show, you've heard this already. So, okay. Growing up, I never really thought of myself as much of a winner. I didn't think I was a loser so much, but I just didn't win things. Like I didn't win the best drawing in art class, or I didn't win the best poem in English class. And Halloween costume contests, those were so out of reach. I thought for sure in the 3rd grade I had it because I was a pack of cigarettes. It was the 70s, and that was okay to dress up your kid as a pack of cigarettes. Like my mom brought home a display box of, it was Merit Ultra Light, and my dad cut armholes, and he put wrapping paper tubes coming out, so it looked like cigarettes were coming out of the box. And I was a pack of cigarettes, and marched in the parade as a pack of cigarettes, and I didn't win. Womp womp. In 5th grade, my best friend and I decided to be Bride of Frankenstein together, and she won, and I didn't. And I'm like, we look the same. And that just that kind of, I guess I did want to win the Halloween costume contest, but it just kind of ruined it for me. So cut to senior year in high school, and I was the high school mascot. My grandmother had made me the lion suit, and because she made it, I got to keep it after. So that became my just standard Halloween costume. We didn't have a mask. I had a little headband with ears, and I drew whiskers on my face, and I wore that. So I just basically phoned in Halloween every year. fast forward to, it was the late 90s, early aughts. I was on an HR team in San Francisco, and we decided to try to shake things up a bit, because HR at that time were the party planners. And we wanted to have a Halloween costume contest. We decided to put that forth. And this is a civil engineering firm. So like the hardest audience to try to get behind a Halloween costume contest. But we fortunately had like an intern program, and we had younger engineers in, so they kind of bit. The first year, the guy won as Royal Tenenbaums, which is just like a very easy costume to do. But I think him wearing a wig was what sold it. I wore my lion suit and, of course, didn't place because I just phoned it in. The second year, I dialed it up a bit. I rented a costume from Belrose. It was this beautiful white ball gown because I wanted to be a starlet from like the 30s and 40s movies. I had a blonde wig and rhinestone jewelry, and I think I had a cigarette thing and character shoes, and I felt like just a different person. It was amazing. Came in second, so I'm like, okay, I'm getting closer. This is great. Took work. It wasn't just wearing my lion suit. So the next year, my HR team, there were 4 of us. We decided we were going to do a group contest, costume. With 4 of us, we were not going to be the Beatles. We weren't going to be former presidents. So we chose everybody's favorite, clowns. But because I had little kids, I had a 2-year-old and a 5-year-old, I was not going to be a creepy clown, even though pretty much every clown is creepy. I was going to be a cute clown. And so that lion suit that my grandmother had sewed for me, at that time she also gifted me a sewing machine. So she taught me how to do things with it. And I decided I was going to make the best clown suit I could ever make. And it was the most elaborate thing I've ever done, even to this day. I didn't want her help. I wanted to do it all on my own. So I went to the fabric store that is where Joann's is, and bought a pattern and bought all the things. It had a whole list of things that I didn't even know what bric-a-brac, what is that? But I bought it all. And I set to making this suit, and most ridiculous fabric you could buy, because I wanted to be cute too. Like I wasn't going to be a creepy clown, not just a polka dotty clown. So, and I bought the plastic things that go over your shoe covers, that make your feet this big and you walk funny. And I had the flower that squirted water, and I had the nose, and my kids were little, so we had face painting. That was a daily thing in our house. So I had how to paint a big clown smile and the big eyebrows, and I also learned how to make balloon animals. It was before YouTube was as accessible as it is now. So I had to send away for a how to make balloon animals kit, and it was a VHS tape because I still had a VCR player, and I wanted to learn how to make more than one. But between making the suit and learning how to make animals, I'm like, I'll just learn how to make one, and I could do it really quickly. I learned how to make the dog, and I was really fast at it. And so I was all ready. I was all ready for Halloween. Now, fortunately, my kids woke up at their papas that morning because we were a split house. So I got to get ready all completely unencumbered. And it was a weekday, obviously. I work in San Francisco. I take the bus to the city. And today was not going to be any other day, like any other day. I'm not going to drive in just because it's Halloween. So I am fully decked out. And I live in Kentfield and took the bus from the College of Marin. I took an earlier bus because I knew there would be fewer people on an earlier bus. And the only thing I didn't have on me were my clown shoes, because those were actually a pain in the neck to walk in. So I'm at the bus stop at Woodlands Market and fully decked out, waiting for the bus. And it's early again, nobody really is around. But then this mid-70s, early 80s gentleman strolls up to the bus stop. He's got his briefcase and he's got his fedora. He's all suited up. He's ready to go to the office, and he just looks at me and he's like, "Where are you going?" And I'm like, "Well, I'm going to work." And he's like, "Where do you work? What do you do?" And I'm like, "I'm in HR." And he's like, "Dressed like that?" And I'm like, "Well, it is Halloween, sir." And he had no idea it was Halloween. So board the bus, and after my firstborn, I had to always sit in the, my inner ear got all messed up, and I had to sit in the front row. So I'm in the front row, dressed fully as a clown, and everybody's boarding, and we go down, I don't know, the Tamalpais, that whole route in 18. Everybody's boarding, and they're like, I was a hit. They were laughing at me, and happy Halloween. A lot of people forgot it was Halloween until they saw me. Get into the office early, and I beelined it to my office, which was on the side. You know, HR is pretty hidden and we're secret. We don't do a lot of stuff out in public. So I'm on the side. But anytime I'm out interacting with anybody on the floor, I had made the decision not to speak to them. Instead, I made a balloon animal and handed it to them. And these people had no idea who I was. I had done the makeup so well. I had the wig on. I'm in the clown suit. I'm not speaking. I'm making balloon animals and walking away. And they really just didn't know who I was, unless they happened over, but they never really did. Fast forward to the costume contest, you know, it's toward the end of the day and the big reveal comes and I won. Yay! And we as the HR team had decided when we decided doing all these costume contests, we're like, we're not gonna exempt ourselves from winning the prize. If we win the prize, we win the prize, because usually HR gets the shaft. You don't get anything, you know, no referral bonus, nothing. So I won the prize. And I realized after all of that I really, like, all the stuff that I didn't win as a kid, I was half-assing things. I didn't try hard enough. Like, I didn't try hard enough. And I went all in on this clown suit, and people didn't know who I was. Even my kids, when I went to pick them up at daycare at the end of the day, you know, I come, you know, bouncing in as a clown, and they don't know who I am. Even though the clown suit was hanging in the doorway for, you know, a month while I was making it, my 2-year-old freaks the fuck out. Because she's like, and I'm like, hi! And she's like, ah! Didn't know, you know, she did not recognize me. But it was like, that was what it was. It was like, I had to really go all in on the situation and do the work. And that's how you win things. I'm sure there are lucky people, but in general, you have to just do the work. So that's what I learned. Thank you. And for your viewing pleasure, and there's my little one. She's looking like she's being hijacked by a clown. She's like, get me out of there. Yeah, but I still have the suit. I haven't worn it again because it's a whole thing, but thank you.
Lisa, give it up for Lisa. Oh my God, that's a great story. I just wanted, speaking of Halloween, I just want to, just a little side note. So my mom was really, my whole family is always very into Halloween. And we lived in this house on top of a hill, and there was, it was like, what do you call the window up top? What do you call that? Like one of those windows up top over the front door. And she would dress up, each year she would dress up, and one year she dressed up as a witch, and she went all out. She did like her nose with oatmeal, yeah, and it was like sticking down like this, and really scary, and a hat, and light shining up, and she'd lower the candy down from the top. We had no visitors that year. It was too scary. All the kids would just be like, no, I'm not going there. Anyway, that's CJ right here. Give it up for CJ. Okay, and one more time for Lisa, because that was a great story. All right, let's do one more of these, because why not? Let's see. All right, this may have been made up. We'll see. A child that learned to run before walking. I frequently darted into large crowds, never to be seen again. Fortunately, with my flaming red hair, it may be easily found. Is that you? Excellent. Thanks for that story. All right, let's see. Who's going to go next? I'm going to have Dara come and tell her story. I don't have words for Dara because you didn't give them to me. Because Dara hooked me up. The last minute, we had some people got sick, and she came at the last minute to help us out. So, there we go. Is there a theme to your story?
Almost.
Almost. Almost is a theme? All right. Almost.
I think I'm pretty fortunate because usually by the time the vacation comes to an end or the weekend is wrapping up, I feel good and I'm ready for the transition back to life. My partner, Karen, not so much. We were wrapping up a 17-day trip in Costa Rica, our first international trip together. We had gone to the Caribbean coast and we'd gone to the rainforest and the cloud forest and the volcano, and we'd seen it all. It was a fabulous trip. And we were on the plane heading home when our seatmate started telling us all about the wonders of Guatemala, where she was going. She talked about the mountains and the indigenous people and the artesanía, and, you know, as wonderful as Costa Rica is with all of the wildlife, there's not much handicraft. And so we were kind of yearning for that. And by the time the plane began its descent, Karen was asking me to ask the airline if we could just stay over for a day or two. and then continue our way on home. I don't know why I always have to ask. Anyway, the plane landed in Guatemala City, and I asked if we could stay over for a day or two, and they said, no, you already have boarding passes, so we can't change up your plans now. But listen, there's an hour until the plane leaves, so you can shop in the airport here. We have plenty of lovely stores. And shop we did. We became enamored with the weavings, the beautiful textiles of Guatemala. And we got back on the plane, and we just thought, wow, what a beautiful country. Maybe in 3 or 4 years we'll save up enough money to make another international trip, and we'll come and visit this country. Well, it was the early 1990s, and we didn't really know much about Guatemala. Well, we knew nothing, actually. And so we started to inform ourselves after we got home, and we learned that they were having a civil war. They had been since 1960, and so, maybe it wasn't the safest place to go, but we thought it was a pretty interesting place with all of the indigenous people. And it happened that the next year, airfare to Mexico went on sale. I mean, super cheap. It was so cheap we couldn't afford not to go. And I said, listen, Mexico's right next to Guatemala, and it's very cheap to travel overland, and so maybe we buy these bargain tickets and we travel overland, and just before we go to Guatemala, we'll ask people if they think it's safe, and then we'll decide to go or not go. So we went, and we traveled across land to San Cristobal de las Casas in the department that's right next to the border with Guatemala. And it was feeling kind of tense. There were people in military uniforms and guns, but we asked if it was safe to go to Guatemala, and people said yes. So we crossed the border and went into the highlands of Guatemala, and we actually ended up in a place called Todos Santos, which was absolutely gorgeous. And we spent a week there. And then, of course, we had to come back home. It was a long trip. In fact, on this trip, we spent more time getting to and from Guatemala than we spent in Guatemala. So, maybe moral of the story, if you want to go somewhere, buy your plane ticket to the place that you want to go. Okay, so we were young. The next year, somehow miraculously, I had enough frequent flyer miles for us to go to Guatemala. So I booked our tickets. And the night before we went, Karen said to me, do you have your passport? I said, no, I don't have a passport. You have to have a passport. Why? Because you're going to another country. Well, we went there last year, and I showed them my California driver's license, and they let me in, so I don't think I need a passport. Well, guess what? You were right, dear. When we got to the airport, they wouldn't let me on the plane because I didn't have a passport. Well, we can't take you somewhere. If they're not going to let you in, then we'd have to take you back, and we're not going to take that risk. So no, you cannot get on the flight. This was the old days. This was before 9/11. You could walk right up to the gate. And so we did that, and we presented our reservations. And they started stamping. Guadalajara. They kept saying Guadalajara, and I don't know why, but I had to say, oh, but actually I'm going to Guatemala. Guatemala? Oh no, you can't go. They called us about you. You cannot go. You don't have the appropriate documentation. We cannot take you. Sorry. And there I was, having ruined our vacation. We were all packed. We had the time off work. We were ready to go, and we could not go. So I retreated back to the lobby, and I called the United Airlines frequent flyer program, and I said, listen, I'm in a bit of a spot here. I don't have a passport. I want to go somewhere where they speak Spanish, where it's warm, that I can go for 30,000 miles, and you have seats available now. And I don't need a passport to get in. What can you do for me? She says, well, Costa Rica. And I was about to say, oh, I've been to Costa Rica, but I kept my mouth shut. And she said, I can get you to Costa Rica. You don't need a passport, 30,000 miles. I have seats available for tonight. And I said, okay, thank you so much. So we went home, and we came back that night. And Karen, she was really nervous because I told her that my plan was that we would get off in Guatemala, because the plane goes from San Francisco to Guatemala and from Guatemala to Costa Rica. We only traveled with carry-on, so no big deal. And the plane's beginning its descent, and they're talking about the policia. And she's nervous, and she's nervous. And I said, just follow me. And, you might not think I'm a person who could walk fast, but we got in that airport, and I was the first one through customs and immigration. And I'm waving my my hand. I said, I'm in, come on. And so we got in. But then she said, well, what about going back? We're not in Costa Rica. They're not going to let us on the plane. I said, well, let's go talk to the airline and let them know. And I said, well, we've decided we'd like to visit this country, and so we won't be boarding the next flight. And can you arrange our return flight? And she said, what about your luggage? Here it is. We held up our bags. We're good. And so they changed our tickets for us. And that was how we got to visit Guatemala and spend the entirety of our vacation in the country we wanted to visit. And so that began our love affair with this country. And some years later, we adopted a child from Guatemala. And some years later, we adopted another child. And some years later, we found the woman who had given birth to our child. And there were family reunions. And suffice it to say that I have probably 24 stamps in my passports to Guatemala.
Nice. That is a nice story about Guatemala. But you did break this. No, I'm kidding. Speaking of Guatemala, so my wife and I have been to Guatemala actually a few times. We've had some wonderful experiences there as well. But your story also reminded me, we were supposed to be going to Vietnam. This was my 40th birthday? 40th. My 40th birthday. By the way, if you ever need travel advice, this is the one to talk to. And she wants to talk to you about going to Cuba, Marianne. But anyway, we were going to Vietnam, and we got to the airport, and they said, oh, you need a visa to go to Vietnam. And we said, oh, we don't have a visa. And they said, well, you can't get on the plane. They said, well, look, we're going through Korea. Just get us to Korea. First, we were using miles. So we're going from San Francisco to LA, from LA to Korea, from Korea to Vietnam. So we go from San Francisco to LA, and they said, well, you need to have a visa. Just get us to LA. So then we get to LA, and they said, well, you need a visa to get to Korea, to get to Vietnam. I said, just get us to Korea. We got to Korea, and we go into the because we were using miles. We go into the business class, lounge, and the person's like, oh, don't you need a visa to go to Vietnam? We're like, no, you don't need a visa. And they're like, okay, clamp, clamp, stamp, stamp. And we get into Vietnam, and 3 guys in military uniforms come up to us and say, passport. And we give them the passport, and they disappear. And we're sitting there like, uh-oh. And the little guy comes back about 20 minutes later, big smile on his face, and he says, visa. And we said, yes. And he goes, and we gave him a big chunk of money, and we got into Vietnam. Anyway, so we're going to do one more story, and then we're going to have a break. But before I do that, let's do I have any more of these pieces of paper, or did you guys lay them out? Let's see. Do I have? I heard that one. I did that one already. No, I think oh, wait, there's more here. Let's see. Nope, can't find any more. I'll find them later. So we're going to do one more story, and then we'll have a break. Let's have Falk, you want to tell your story? Okay, so let's give it up, Falk, everybody. Let me get your words up here. Yes, absolutely. There you go, I'll let you do that. Here we go.
All right.
It's not a good look.
Thank you so very much, Gary, to have me perform here with these wonderful storytellers that we heard. Let's give it up for them again. Yay! Thank you so much. Thank you so much. So, when I first came to this country, I would attend sports events, and I was always so struck by the fact that Americans would sing the national anthem with sincerity and in community. And even at these super minor sports events, and growing up in Germany, these expressions of national pride were never done and never exhibited, and it made me somewhat jealous because in Germany expressing national pride was kind of historically not a good look. That doesn't mean that when I was a child and, I saw the Eurovision, the European Song Contest, I did not secretly want the German singer to win. You know, I would be sitting on the sofa, you know, eyes glued on the television, secretly, you know, having my fingers crossed behind my back. But alas, the country that brought you Bach and Beethoven never won through all of my childhood. Never ever did the German singer grab victory. That is until 1982, when finally there was a German winner, winning with a song called Ein bisschen Frieden, which translates into a little bit of peace. After decades of losses, including 2 catastrophic world wars, Germany had finally hit on the strategy for winning, and a little bit of peace was all it took. So imagine my surprise then when I went with my wife to Germany in the summer of 2018. It was, you know, it was the summer of the World Soccer Cup. And, you know, Germany was awash in the colors of the national flag, red, gold, and black. I was completely shocked at this. My country, you know, in this kind of a, finding itself in this kind of a predicament here. You know, of course, you know, there were no German flags hanging out of windows. Again, historically, not a good look. So, you know, instead, my German compatriots, you know, chose to paint their faces and dress their dogs in the colors of the German flag. It struck me as weird. Now, don't get me wrong. I mean, a little, you know, French bulldog, you know, dressed in a hand-knit sweater, sporting stripes of red, black, and gold. That's kind of sweet. Je suis désolé, France, if you cannot take a joke. But on the other hand, you know, seeing a German shepherd in that same outfit, historically not a good look. So, you know, it was, you know, the soccer championships. Germany was the reigning champion. 4 years earlier, it had won against Argentina. So, you know, confidence in Germany was pretty high. And, you know, my wife also had a hard time with this. My wife is Mexican. So, you know, if I was kind of finding this expression of German pride, national pride, kind of disturbing, she had a flat out counter reaction to it. We spent a whole afternoon, and I must tell you, you know, in Germany, when you go home, you know, it's not really a vacation, you need to see relatives, etc. So spending an afternoon, you know, doing what we did was a high price for me to pay. So we spent this afternoon looking for a Mexican flag. We went from store to store to store, and no Mexican flag was to be had. To make matters worse, in the first round of the World Soccer Championships, Germany was scheduled to play, yes, against Mexico. You know, that day counts as one of the top 5 most difficult days of my marriage. Germany had played Mexico 11 times in the past, and out of those 11 times, Germany had won all 11 times. The only discussion in Germany was by how many goals Mexico was going to lose. And here was my wife, engaging in magical thinking, telling me that this was going to be the time that Mexico was going to kick some German butt. And I thought to myself, no way, Jose. And then, you know, the morning of the match, we went to the gym. And, you know, the German blonde fitness person behind the desk, you know, was standing there. And she had painted not only the German flag on her forehead, no, also on both of her cheeks. And that kicked my wife over the edge. And she, with an attitude that she called standing up for Mexico, said, Mexico is going to win. The woman looked at her, handed her a membership card and said, Wir sind Weltmeister. We are world champions. As the match went underway, we boarded a plane, a Lufthansa plane, to Copenhagen, Denmark. The plane was full of Germans, reluctant to turn off their cell phones, watching the match. But eventually, my national proclivity for obedience kicked in and everybody turned off their cell phones. And, as we were flying, through the sky, beautiful clouds, as we were flying through the sky, the voice of the pilot came on, and he said that Germany had lost to Mexico 0-1. In that stunned silence, that silence was interrupted only by one person. My wife. She literally got up and started dancing through the aisles, raising her arm and making woo, woo, whooping noises. And that sight of my wife expressing Mexican national pride and putting German feelings of superiority into their place was historically a great look.
That was amazing. Wow. All right, that was a good story. Give it up for Falk. That was really good. These have all been great stories tonight. This is what they all have been great stories tonight. So we're just gonna have a little break. There's a bathroom there. There's drinks out there, and then we'll have a couple more storytellers, and then we'll call it a night. So please help yourself, and we'll see you in a few. Okay, let's get started for our second half of the Fly Story Salad. Whoop, whoop, whoop. Okay, my wife just realized. Okay, anyway, she'll be back. Don't worry. So let's see. Well, in the break, we had some people who actually expressed some interest in telling some stories. So we're actually going to have a few more. So that's pretty cool. Let me do this. Maybe that. Yeah, there we go. Okay, so we're gonna have Marianne come up and tell a story. So everyone's give it a big hand for Marianne. Oh, let me give you this, and then we get your words. Put that on.
Ooh, shocking. Oh yeah, it's right there. Hi. Bring my sunglasses. That's so cute. Thank you. Are they prescription? No, that's okay. But really, maybe, no, just joking. Do you want to wear them?
CJ, let her tell the story.
Okay. This story's theme is about who's driving. The day my son Cooper went to take his driving road test at the DMV, he was in the bathroom throwing up. And I was standing on the other side of the door. Now, as a mom of 3 sons, I know when to push and I know when to cuddle. And I pushed those 3 boys into this world. And I decided this is the day to push. I'm going to get him there because he needs to drive. Because in a few months, he's going to be in college, in film school in LA. And that requires a lot of experience driving to get to shoots and to do stuff, right? You need to know how to do those crazy freeways they have in LA. So I was there on the other side of the bathroom going, Coop, it's time to go. You got 5 minutes. I'll meet you in the car. I will drive you to the DMV. So I do. I drive him, and he slinks into the car, and he slumps down. And on the way there, I start thinking of all these ways that I can convince him that this is going to be a really good idea, that he'll just snap out of his fears, and he'll suddenly be willing to do this. Nothing's working. Think of all the freedom you'll have having a set of wheels, and maybe you'll pick up girls and whatever. Nothing's working. He's just sinking lower in the chair and looking more green. We get to the DMV, and I spot across the street is a Pete's Coffee. I'm like, that's what you need. You need a cup of Joe. All right. So I go across the street, and we park, and we get into the store, and there's a line, and we stand on the line, and I look at all the possible different types of coffees. I'm like, which one would you like? And I turn around, and he's gone. He's completely disappeared. So I text his older brother and I'm like, all right, here's the deal. Find your brother now. And he's on it. I ordered 2 coffees, a black and a white one, and I go out into the parking lot and his brother found him. So Cooper is hiding out in the parking lot and I see his little blonde head pop up over the other parked cars, and he comes to me quivering, and I'm like handing him the coffee. Which one? Just take one and drink it. And we get back in the car, go across the street, get to the DMV, and he refuses to get out of the passenger seat. So I take all his paperwork and I go up to the register and I go up to the counter, and the person looks at me and like, the driver needs to be here to do the paperwork. Somehow I managed to get Cooper out of the car to go up there and do the paperwork. But the moment he comes back, he sits on the passenger side again and locks himself in. I give up. I leave the car and I just go for a walk and I sit on a curb and I'm just like, I surrender. I'm going to do something I don't do very often, but God, help me. I'm going to pray to you. I don't know what to do right now. I've tried everything. I've led this horse to water and he's not drinking, and he has to. It's so important because he has to know how to drive. So I just say, I'm handing it over to you. And my eyes are closed and I just relax. And suddenly I hear a woman's voice. Excuse me, madam, but is this your son trying to take a lesson? And I open up my eyes and there's a vision of yellow in front of me. This beautiful woman standing there in a beautiful suit, all yellow. And I look at her and she says, is that your son? I said, yes, him sitting in the car. And she goes, my daughter's in the bathroom throwing up. She's taking the test too. I was like, oh, okay. And then she proceeds to knock on the window at my son. And she goes, Sonny, open the door. Come on out. My daughter is going to take her test today too. And he just looks at her like, who is this woman? And he starts to open the door slowly, but he has no idea who she is. And she goes, oh, here comes my daughter now. And out comes this beautiful young woman with long dark hair and soft brown eyes, wringing her hands, looking very pale. Cooper sees her. He opens the door. He jumps out. He grows 3 inches and his chest puffs out. And his cheeks go from green to like proud hue. And it turns out they know each other from school. And all of a sudden he's got all this confidence and his voice drops an octave. Hello there. Yes, I'm taking my test. It's no problem. And in an instant, he's able to command everything that I could not get him to do. And they start chit-chatting, and she seems to calm down, and they're giggling, and then suddenly I hear his name is called out, Cooper Shine. And there's the examiner with his clipboard, and Cooper strides over to the driver's side, opens the door, gets in, snaps on the seatbelt, turns on the engine. I got this. He looks at her. She waves. The examiner checks off a few things, snaps himself in, closes the door, signals to Cooper, and Cooper starts the engine again. It's a horrible noise. And I'm like, okay, we're done for. He's failed. The examiner sees what's going on, and the girl's like, and the mom's like, whoop, and I'm like, ah. And he gives Cooper another chance, and the two of them drive off together. And the girl waves goodbye, and the mom waves goodbye, and I have no more fingernails left. I've bitten them all. But the moral of the story is, sometimes I'm not the one who's always driving. Someone else is in charge. Huh? Oh.
Nice story. Let's give it up for Mary Ann. Uh-oh, what happened? Did it not go? It should be on. Is it on? Low battery. That's okay. It'll be fine. So that's funny because my daughter also just took her driver's license test, and it was funny because I taught 3 kids how to drive, and my boys were all about the accelerator. They were about getting there fast and going as fast as they could. I always said, slow down, slow down, slow down. You know, going around curves. We live up in the hills in Mill Valley. My daughter did not touch the accelerator for the first like 5 or 6 training lessons. She was all about. She would either it was just idling. We would just going really slow, and then the brake. Anyway, meanwhile, she's the only one who's gotten a ticket for going 88 miles an hour going to, yeah. The boys haven't got a ticket, but she did. Yeah. Yeah, that's a whole nother story. Okay, so we're gonna have Alex come up, and Alex just volunteered to tell a story, which I think is so amazing. I don't know what the story's about, but she's seen this before. She's gonna do a great job. Come on down, Alex. Okay, I'll let you put that on there somewhere.
Thank you. I guess I'll put this on my scarf.
There we go.
I'm so short. Okay. Just have to put this down.
There we go.
Okay, perfect. Okay. So I have a background in photography. You're actually looking at the 2023 Mill Valley Click-Off third place winner. No big deal. But having this background in photography, I've gotten some pretty unique opportunities at the agency that I work for. I work for a fire agency. And so I get to document a lot of the work that we do. So whether it be like a badge pinning or our fire academy, I get to go out and take these really amazing pictures. So one of the programs we have is a hand crew, which is essentially a group of the most intimidating guys you will probably ever meet. They're physically fit, they come off a little bit rigid, but they're also really badass, and I respect the work they do so much. So when my boss asked if I wanted to go out on the field and take photos of the work that they were doing, I was like, absolutely, count me in. Because not only did I want to take pictures of everything they were doing, but I wanted to be one of the boys so badly. Like, I wanted to be in their cool exclusive club and get like the stamp of approval from the fire crew. I don't get a lot of FaceTime with them because I work in admin. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, this is my chance to get some one-on-one time with the crew. I'm gonna leave the field and they're gonna think I'm so cool. Like, I'm so excited. And so the night before, I'm picking out an outfit because I can't really show up in regular office clothes because I'm gonna be like walking through bushes and like really interesting terrain. So trying to think of something that I wouldn't mind getting too messed up. And I pull out a pair of really old skinny jeans. And I'm like, okay, this was perfect. I haven't worn these in like 5 years. I don't really care what happens to them. But I also hadn't worn them in 5 years. So when I put them on the next morning, when I was getting ready for work, I was like, wow, these are a lot smaller than I remembered them being. But honestly, it's fine. Like, I look cool in skinny jeans. They're gonna see me pull up in these, and they're gonna be like, wow, she's so like trendy and cool in her skinny jeans. Although I really doubt most men would think that or even notice what pants I was wearing. But in my head, I'm like, this is gonna be perfect. So I'm driving over to the work site, and I'm just like really getting in my head because I've worked it up to be this really big moment where I'm gonna become like part of the crew. Like, they're gonna adopt me into this club, and I like have to be super cool. And I'm getting so stressed about it. I'm like, my stomach's kind of starting to hurt, and I'm like, oh man, it's these jeans. They're like way too tight. Like, I'm just, I'm driving in my car, the privacy of my car. I'm just gonna unbutton the top, and it's gonna be fine. Like, I'll feel better. And I'm like almost to the work site, still like in my head, thinking really deeply about this big moment I'm gonna have with the crew. And like my stomach still really, really hurts. Like, I must be so nervous right now. So I'm like, okay, I'm gonna loosen up my pants a little bit more. We're gonna unzip them. So at this point, we are button undone, fully zipped down. I'm like, okay, I'm kind of starting to feel better. Okay, like, this is good. So I get to the work site. I'm like looking in the mirror, like making sure I look good, checking my camera, making sure like everything is good to go. And I call up the captain, and I'm like, hey, can you come meet me like at the road and walk me up to the work site? I'm here with my camera. And looking back on this, I think I was way too optimistic on like how friendly they were gonna be, because shockingly, hand crew folks don't really love having their picture taken. Like, they're out there doing a really strenuous, hard job, and I think the last thing they want is the admin person with the camera in their face. So the captain comes down, he greets me, and then we walk up this 90-degree hill. I'm like, okay, I guess we're walking up this 90-degree hill. I'm breaking a sweat. I look so disheveled. And I'm having a full-on conversation with this captain. He's looking me dead in the eye the entire time. I'm like, wow, his eye contact is really good. Like, he like must really care what I'm like talking about right now. That's like incredible. I'm like getting off. I'm like, I know I look kind of just like disheveled, but like I think this is going really well. So I get to the top of this hill. I'm like full on sweating. I'm like, okay, I'm here to take my pictures. Start taking photos. One of the seasonals comes up to me. Again, we have a full-on conversation. And I'm like, wow, this guy's making really good eye contact with me too. Like, this is so great. Like, I'm really having my moment right now. And so I keep taking photos. And at this point, I had taken off my glasses. So everything's a little bit blurry. And I'm taking photos of this seasonal. And he's again staring at me, and now I'm kind of like, okay, this is weird. Like, what is going on? Like, they can't handle a woman out here. Like, they're just intimidated because they're all guys, and like I'm the only female out here. Like, that's ridiculous. I'm like, okay, like the people who were talking to me, really good eye contact, but for the most part, people were a little standoffish, and I'm like, that's kind of strange. So taking photos of this guy, he's looking at me, I'm looking at him, and we're just like, he's stopped working. Like, he's not chainsawing anymore, and we're just like staring at each other. And then I just have this moment, like this rush of energy kind of like come over me, and I look down and I'm like, oh my God, I never zipped my pants up or buttoned them. So I'm like fully on this project with my pants completely undone, and no one has said anything to me, which I don't know if that was because they were trying to be nice, or like they just, I don't know how you would even tell somebody that. Like, that's so awkward. And so I'm like, okay, so I turn around, I zip up my pants, and then I go up to the captain and I'm like, yeah, I think I got what I needed. He's like, and he's like, really? You've been here like 30 minutes. Like, I thought this was like an all day thing. I'm like, no. You guys are doing really good. Like, I'm good. Like, I'm going to walk down that hill by myself, actually. So thank you so much. Like, thank you. And I'm like walking down this, again, 90-degree hill, and it was really challenging. Like, I literally was like butt scooting all the way down. And as I'm doing this, I'm like, oh my God, I really thought that this was my moment, and it kind of flopped. And I kind of got to thinking about it, and I'm like, I think it was a good reminder that you don't have to get a stamp of approval from anyone to like be a part of this exclusive club like I had made it out to be in my head. And it actually really made me appreciate my place in the department, which is like, I'm an admin. Like, I don't have to be one of the boys. I think I made it very clear today that I'm not one of the boys. And that's not really my scene. So yeah, that was like my moment of like really accepting like where I fall into place. And yeah, and no one's brought it up to this day, so I'm hoping they forgot about it.
Amazing. Okay, I'm sorry. We have to give it up for Alex. That's a great story, right off the cuff. Oh my gosh, amazing. Wow, very funny. I kind of wanted to like walk up here with my fly not just to see what you guys would say, but because I'm one of those guys. I do this. Like I'm one of those people that if someone has something in their teeth or like a booger hanging out of their nose or their flies undone, I don't care if I don't know them. I will tell them, because that's the worst. You get home at the end of the day and you have this like big green booger or like this thing in your tooth. And you're like, that's been there all day since I had lunch and nobody said anything. So yes. Anyway, please feel free to tell me if that happens to me. Anyway, Scott has already told me that in the past. All right. Okay, we have let's see. We have two more sentences of international meat smuggling as a minor.
Oh, that's me.
That's you. Okay.
There's a story to go with it.
Okay. All right. Excellent. Let's just real quick. I woke up to people hollering my name. Most of the crew was gone except for three or four others. Three or four of them. All right. Do you want to tell your busted story?
Yeah, I'll tell it.
All right. So let's have one more story, and then we're gonna finish up with Mimi. All right. Come on down. What's your name?
John Carlo.
Giancarlo, everybody. Give it up for Giancarlo. All right. Put that on there. Right. I'll just put it right there.
There,
we go.
perfect.
All right.
Thank you.
Get out of your way.
Um,
Do it, Giancarlo.
wow, got to follow that last one. That was really good.
Yeah.
I was inspired earlier by all of the amazing stories people were telling about international travel and getting stuck in customs. And it reminded me of a story I had from when I was a kid. And I wasn't going to say it, but then the two girls who came with me poked me, and I went and wrote it in the bin. Back when I was younger, my grandparents, my grandfather and grandmother, those are your grandparents if you don't know, had a timeshare. I don't know how my grandpa got suckered into it, but he did, and they were stuck with it. It was in Aruba, and they had it for a couple of years. And so during the summer, my parents' big idea was they wanted something for the kids to do that was out of the house. They didn't want us to stay local. And so they wanted us to go on a big trip, but we couldn't afford to go on a big trip as a family. So what they did is they would ship us individually to go to Aruba, one at a time. And so we would get to spend a couple weeks on this tropical island with our grandparents and like one other cousin. And our grandparents, understandably, had bought this timeshare and wanted to use it to enjoy their time there, not to babysit. So they would fly us out as unaccompanied minors. That's what they call you when you fly alone below a certain age. And you get treated really well. They like walk you through the airport and they hold your hand and they give you like this little badge with pilot's wings on it. I don't know if they still do that, but they did do that like pre 9/11. I don't know what the deal is now. But they would send you, through the airport, and you'd go down to Aruba, and other people would go other places. But we went to Aruba. And me and my cousin Nick got sent out there. My grandparents, not wanting to deal with us, would find all these little camps or programs or just activities that were supervised so they could like play bingo and hang by the pool. And my grandma loved to play bingo, and they had it like every morning. So one of the such activities that we got sent to was visiting an ostrich farm, which I don't know if any of you have ever been. It's just a farm with ostriches. They walk you around and you get to feed the ostriches, which is fun. And then at the end, like every good tourist trap, it has a overpriced gift store. And so me and my cousin were allowed into this gift store. I don't know why. We had no money. But they let us mess around in here, and there were a ton of like tchotchkes and local art that also had made in China stickers on it, and just lots of little baubles that you could buy. And we very quickly found the hand-carved walking sticks and made them into lightsabers, and were sword fighting with them in the gift shop, which was not a great idea because we ended up knocking over it seemed towering at the time, carved giraffe. And it slammed into the ground and its head broke off and like scattered across the floor underneath a countertop where it could not be retrieved. And almost like they did it on purpose, behind where the giraffe had been standing was a giant piece of paper that said, "You break it, you buy it." And the sticker on the giraffe said $1,000. Which at the age of 12 was an impossible amount of money. It was an amount of money I was like, I could buy 10 cars with $1,000. So we stood it up and I panicked. I was white as a sheet. I didn't know what to do. And we both went to the bathroom and washed our hands like we'd committed a murder. And I said to my cousin, I was like, what are we going to do? What are we going to tell everybody? And my cousin, who's a little sociopath, looked at me and he said, "What are we going to tell anybody about what?" And so I went back to the car, sick to my stomach, and I felt completely nauseous, and I tried my best to forget about it. And the rest of the trip went on the way it was supposed to go, and we had a good time, and I completely, it moved into the back of my head, and I resolved that I wasn't going to get caught. And so it comes to be the time to fly home. My cousin lived at the time here in California, and I lived in New York, and my grandparents had some other return flights, so we were unaccompanied minors. And we're in line, and I've got a book bag that my grandmother packed for me, and they're, so I put it through the security, and they're going through all of our belongings. And security comes, and they say, you and you and you and you and you all need to come with us. And so me and my grandmother and my cousin and my uncle, we all get ushered into another little room. And they sit us down at a table, and they go, "Have any of you been to an ostrich farm while you were on this island?" And only the children had gone. And my cousin wasn't going to say anything. And I decided that I wasn't going to say anything. And I turned to my right, and all I saw was my grandmother's finger pointing at me. And she said, "They went." And so I was picked up with my cousin, and we were put and sat down at a table. And they opened my bag in front of me. And I didn't know what they were going to pull out. Honestly, I thought I was going to die in an Aruban prison. I was like, they got me. I don't know how they got me. This was pre-security footage. So they sat me down at this table, and they opened the backpack, and they picked out 5 sandwiches wrapped in aluminum foil. And I didn't know what they were. I didn't know they were sandwiches. They were in my bag. And they said, "Do you know what this is?" And I said, "Honestly, I have no idea what that is." And they opened them, and they were sandwiches that my grandma had lovingly packed for me. And they held up a piece of bologna, and they said, "This carries bird flu. You can't bring this into the United States." And I had at that point not heard a word they'd said. I was confessing to a crime that I had committed. I was apologizing for decapitating a giraffe. I don't think that made a lot of sense to them. And the end result was that they confiscated the sandwiches, and they put me on the flight as an unaccompanied minor, and they probably had a good laugh about it later. And I never trusted my grandma. She's a snitch. But long story short, I think it probably would have been better to come clean at the bird farm than let the guilt eat me alive all the way until I got to the airport. But I don't know. I didn't think of a moral because I came up with this during the first act. So maybe there are no consequences to crime. That's the moral for this one. Right. Thanks.
Nicely done. Do one of those.
Oh, yeah.
And one
Cool.
of those.
You're going to need
All
that.
right, thank you so much. Giancarlo, there we go. All right. We have time for one more story, and that's going to be Mimi. Now, Mimi is she just kind of audibles it. She's going to just sort of do her story. We're just going to see what happens. Who knows? Mimi, take it away.
God.
And just so we're clear, like, this is what I do for Mimi every time. It's just
It's funny, since sitting here, I've changed my story 3 times. So it's probably much better that I just don't give any words. It would just be really upsetting for the audience, So the title of my story is 10 Hours in Bundaberg, Australia. So I'd arrived in Australia with my buddy that I'd met in New Zealand. She's Swedish. We'd done all these crazy adventures in New Zealand, hitchhiking races and all these things. And we were like, dude, flights to Australia are so cheap. We should just go to Australia. Let's just go to Australia for a couple months. So we catch a flight, and we're like, okay, now that we're here, what are we gonna do? We don't know anybody. We don't have pretty much any money. So we catch this bus north. There's one of those like hop on, hop off, like the backpacker buses. I think it was like called a Green Turtle out in New Zealand. I don't know what it was called in Australia, but we end up along the Gold Coast, and we're just kind of sitting on a beach. And we're like, we gotta think of something. We gotta do something.
while we're here. And my friend was like, well, I'm already out of money. We've been here 2 days. I've got $0. We're young, we're dumb. We just think that we can just like eat plants. I don't know what we were thinking. She's like, I'm gonna need to work on a farm. I don't know, like a worker. And I was like, okay, well, I'll do woofing. You know, you can be a willing worker on an organic farm. So I'll look up a farm in a town and you can work on a farm nearby. So we find a town called Bundaberg, which is apparently famous. I didn't really know they made all those ginger beers. And now whenever I see this bottle of this ginger beer everywhere I go, I think of this story. So we get to the hostel maybe 8 a.m. and I drop my friend off. She's going to stay at this hostel. And I call from a payphone, you know, we didn't have cell phones back then, of the farm that I'm going to. And the farm descriptions, if you ever did woofing, it was like a paper book with like pages that were like, veggie farm, gym, you know, 888-8888, you know, and you just call a number from a payphone like, hey, Jim, I want to work on your veggie farm. And they like pick you up at a random stop somewhere in town and you work out there. And typically you work for like 4 hours. You can get a place to stay and all the veggies you can eat. It's a pretty great gig if you've ever wanted to try. So I call Jim. And he comes to pick me up pretty much outside the hostel, and we start driving. He's in one of those, like, you know, classic Australian trucks you can imagine, like high-raised snorkel, like we're out in the outback, you know. We're driving further away from town, roads start getting dusty, you know, like that kind of red dust of Australia. It's just flying up everywhere. A couple miles off the main road is just this house, right? There's no farm anywhere to be seen. It's just a house in the middle of this, like, outback. We get out, you know, I have my backpacking bag on. I had dreadlocks. I was like, this is cool. This is cool. He's not going to kill me. It's a farm. He's a woofer. Be cool, Mimi. Be cool. So I get in. There's a living room, and you go through kind of like the kitchen area, and there's the back room. There's no other woofer out there, which is odd. Typically, I've been woofing all over New Zealand. You get out there, and it's a whole bunch of hippies. Everyone's just playing hacky sack. This farm, you know, I don't see the farm. It's just a house in the middle of the outback. So I put my backpacking bag down in the back, and he's like, hey, like, why don't you like do a few chores for like an hour, and then we'll like hang out. So I'm sweeping his porch, right? This is my chore, you know, and I'm kind of loving it because some of the woofing farms, it's hard work. You know, you got to do veggie stuff. You're like out there like slaving away. And so I was like sweeping porches. Okay, nailed this woofing gig. I could do this for, you know, 4 hours a day, get food and free room. My friend's got to work anyway. You know, we'd kind of planned to be here for 3 to 4 days so she could earn up enough money until we get to the next stop. Our plan was to get up to like Cairns. We were going to live our best lives, you know, in the Great Barrier Reef. So a couple hours go by, and he's like, you know, let's stop. Let's have some lunch. He gives me like, you know, a piece of bread and like a piece of cheese on it, like literally. You know, and I'm sitting in the living room. There's not a lot of furniture. And he starts, you know, telling me about himself and about his philosophies of the world. And that's when it got weird, right? He was like, you know, they're all lizards. All of them. All the people out there, especially the people in charge, they're all lizards, you know. And I'm sitting there and I'm like, you know, they're all weird, right? You know, Australians are weird, one, that's a fact. And most farmers are pretty weird. I have a lot of interactions with farmers. I used to work for the farmers markets out here. They're odd folk, you know. So I was like, oh, okay, you know, I can get down with this. And then he's like, you don't by chance smoke, do you? You know, and I'm like, at the time, you know, I mean, it was a dead giveaway. I had dreadlocks. And I'm like, yeah, sure. So he goes back into his back room, and he pulls out a pillowcase full of pot, you know, kind of just drags it into the living room. He starts like rolling like blunts and everything. I take one puff of this thing, and the world starts getting kind of weird, you know. It's like potent. I don't know what it is. I'd had lots of adventures in this arena, and I was like, it was out of my league. It was like 15,000 times harder than anything I'd experienced. So I'm like getting all dry mouth. I'm starting to see weird things, and I'm like, hey man, like, thanks so much for lunch. I'm gonna lay down a second. So I go back into my little back room outside the bed. I close the door, I lay down, and I'm like, that's when it really hit. I was like, this dude's gonna kill me. This motherfucker's gonna kill me. I'm out in the middle of the outback, no cell phone, my friend's all the way in town. I gotta get out of here. I gotta get out of here. But he's in the living room. That's where the door is to get out of the house, and well, my shoes are out there. And my bag, right? I just put it kind of outside the door, and I was like, Mimi, you gotta do what you gotta do. You gotta do what you gotta do, Mimi. So I see a window, you know. I, as quietly as I can, open this window. And I jump out the window. And I army crawl, right? Because I can't let him see me. I can't let him see me escaping the house. Otherwise, he'll kill me, right, at this point. So now I'm army crawling through this red dirt, you know, just like facing the ground, like dirt's like all over me, right? And I'm like stoned out of my mind. I'm like seeing things, like the ground feels really slow, and I'm like, no, you know, like, and ultra paranoid, like any like rustling of anything, I'm convinced he's like gonna come out and like grab me, you know, because he's a killer. So I feel like I'm getting kind of far enough away from the house. I'm kind of up to that dirt road. I'm like, you know, like at least 100 feet away. I've army crawled through the dirt. And I get up. I get the courage to stand up and I run. I mean, run like in Jurassic Park, run like there's a velociraptor. I'm barefoot, covered in dirt, right? I was in like, you know, like those Thailand pants that you wrap and you kind of fall down. You all know the vibe. And I'm just like running. I'm overweight. I've been smoking pot and eating cheese, you know, like for the whole time I've been on this like adventure. I'm running and like kind of worked up at this point. Like I just got to make it into town. I got to make it into town to safety. And I make it into town and I'm just like waving my arms like this, just for anyone to help me. And a car's coming and I'm like, oh God, oh pray. You know, oh God, thank goodness. Well, it's a cop. Well, that's weird, you know? So the cop pulls over and he sees me. I'm covered in dirt, right? I mean, like all over my face. My face is weird. My eyes are bloodshot. And he's like, can I help you, ma'am? You know? And I'm like, he's trying to kill me. Oh, I'm sorry, ma'am. He's trying to kill you. You know? I'm barefoot. And I'm like, there's a guy out there in the woods. And he's got all of my stuff. I'm American. I just kept saying it over and over again, which I don't think was really helping my case at all. And he's like, okay, you know, well, hop in the car. I'll give you a ride up to this house. So he hops in the car and I'm like, all right, Mimi, you got a cop with you. You got to get your stuff and get out of there. So we walk up to the front door and he rings the doorbell. And you'd imagine his surprise that not only the person who he thought was in their bedroom asleep, waiting to do just the next shift of their farm day, now covered in dirt, barefoot, standing next to a cop, right? And he's got his pillowcase of pot sitting in the living room. And the cop's like, listen up. She's got to get her stuff and I've got to talk to you. And I'm like, thanks so much. I run in, I grab my bag, you know, I'm barefoot, I'm putting on my shoes, you know, and I get in the car, I get driven, and the cop drives me, and he's like, well, where are you going to go? I mean, where are you going to stay? And I was like, my friend's at the hostel, right? It just leave me at the hostel. It was one of those hostels. I mean, I know this town is so weird because you couldn't get into the hostel unless you had a key. So you couldn't like wait in the lobby. You were just outside. You're just on the street. So the cop's like, so you want me just to like leave you here? They're like on the side of the road. And I'm like, yeah. You know, I'm like stoned. I'm like drooling probably at this point. It's like real hitting me. I'm seeing stuff still. And I was like, it's all right. I'm an American. Okay. And my friend, they're at work today. They'll get back here and we'll be okay. And so he's like, all right, you know, and he just leaves me there. And I've got my backpacking bag. I'm kind of like curled up on my bag, you know, asleep on the front door. And the cop takes off. I'm kind of in and out of consciousness, for that hour. And then my friend pulls up in one of those, trucks where like you have a whole bunch of, workers in the back. They're all sitting on the side. And she comes off the back of the truck. She's covered in mud. Her arms are hurting. And she was like, I've been pulling zucchinis for like 8 hours. Like my back is hurting. She's covered in dirt. And she's like, I hate this town. And I was like, I hate this town. We hate Bundaberg. So we were just like, we got to get out. We got to get out. We found the first bus out of that town anywhere north. And we just took off. And that was our 10 hours in Bundaberg.
Mimi, let's give it up for Mimi. All right, everybody. Well, I want to let me just remind you that we have another event coming up in a minute. Let me get those. There we go. February 14th in Tam Junction at the Boomerang Lounge. We'll be doing another event. Please come. The storytellers, Giancarlo, Alex, you got to come back, tell some more stories. Those are great. And the other people who put a star that I didn't get a chance to have them tell stories, please come back. That was amazing. You guys, fantastic storytellers. Let's please give a big round of applause for everybody. Really great tonight. Really, really fun. Awesome. I'm Gary. Thanks so much. Thanks for coming, everybody.